Hi there, my name's Conor McMillan. Thanks so much for watching. This channel is all about IFS therapy, self-knowledge, self-love, what it is, how to get it. And this particular video is going to be about what your first IFS session may look like. So just like any other modality, every therapist has a different approach, their own style of doing things. So I'm going to talk about the general approach, and then I'm going to talk about my approach. So the general approach for your first session is probably going to be just you sitting down with the therapist and having a conversation. And during that time, the therapist will likely be mapping parts. And what that looks like is if you say something, if you're telling a story about your friend and you say something like, I'm angry at my friend, or I feel really angry at my friend, the therapist might mirror back to you in the same thing you said, but in parts language. So they would say something like, yeah, so it sounds like a part of you is really angry at your friend. And they would write down maybe angry part. And that would be one of your parts, and they would kind of be helping you distinguish these different parts in yourself. So they might do it kind of subtly, or they might be very upfront about it, but either way, it's helping to change your perspective or change your understanding of how your brain works to identify when parts are up. So you don't kind of see this as one perspective, as one thinking process, but rather a bunch of different parts of you. So another thing that an IFS therapist may do with you on a first session is have you drop in. And dropping in is a more intense procedure or tactic or tool, however you want to look at it, than simply having a conversation. A lot can be done in conversation, especially with a good therapist who is able to mirror back parts that are coming up for you. But dropping in is a whole different ballpark, really. And what that looks like, generally speaking, is you closing your eyes and maybe doing some breath work with the therapist, and then identifying what's coming up for you right then. And the therapist is going to help you in that process. So they're going to ask you things like, how are you feeling right now? What are you noticing right now? What are you noticing in your emotional body? What are you noticing in your thought patterns? What are you noticing in your somatic experiencing self? What are you noticing in your physical body? In a first session, it's really going to be up to the style of your therapist as to whether they want to continue having a conversation with you or checking out the availability for you to drop in. In dropping in, just like in conversation, they're going to be mapping parts that are coming up, so they're going to be writing down these different parts of you. And in later sessions, they're going to bring those parts back up. And when they notice that a part of you is coming up that may have come up in a previous session, they may say something like, hey, you know, that sounds a little bit like this part that we talked about in our first session. Does that sound like it could be a similar part or a same part? And you say, yeah, okay. And that really helps you identify, this is where this part is activated, this is what it's doing for me, this is where it's coming up. So in a first session, we are, as therapists, really looking to just kind of start you thinking about parts of you. And it's really retraining the brain a little bit, but it comes very naturally because, as you noticed, you're already using parts language in your everyday life. Part of me wants to do this, a part of me wants to do that. So most people just kind of, boom, it clicks for them and it works. So that's sort of the general theme of what therapists on the first session are going to do with you. And maybe I can just talk very briefly about what the goal is. And the goal ultimately is self-love. It's that simple. It's self-love. So there are very, very specific techniques in order to deal with certain parts in the system, particularly exiles. Exiles are very, very sensitive parts that most of the time have been hidden away in our system for quite a while. And they need certain things that the protectors of our system do not need. So you really have to work with a skilled therapist, someone who really knows what they're doing, and you can get a ton out of IFS. But you're not going to be unburdening parts necessarily in the first session, and you may not even meet any exiles in the first session. Most likely you're going to be dealing with protector parts, the parts of you that protect the system or are in charge of protecting a particular exile in the system. We can get into protectors and exiles a little bit more in future videos. So again, in your first session, most likely you will be having a conversation. Your therapist may take some time with you to drop in just to kind of test the waters and get you used to it. They're going to be mapping your parts, and the goal is to start developing self-love. So that's really the 4 basic things that are going to be happening in your first session. Now I can talk about my specific approach with sessions. So what most often happens is someone will contact me either through email or a message on YouTube or a message on Facebook asking me if I can do a session with them. And I will immediately send them a PDF explaining IFS a little bit more. So it gives a basic outline of IFS. Now this person already may know what IFS is all about, but me sending out this PDF helps us both get on the same page so that we both know what we are getting into. They know what IFS is, and I know that they know what IFS is. And then in our first session, what I'll do is I will explain to them what that first session is going to look like. So before we even get started, I like to tell my clients, hey, this is what I'm going to do with you today. And if it feels good, we're going to do it this way. And if that doesn't feel good, we're going to do it this way. And generally I say, we're going to start with a conversation, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time dropping in. And during both of those times, I'm going to help you reflect your language back to you, mirror your language back to you in parts language, so that you can start developing the tools yourself to identify different parts of your system. And that's, I find, very helpful for clients to know what they're about to do is really helpful, especially for their first session. And then I will do just that. We'll have a conversation. I'll ask them how they're feeling right now, if there's anything that they'd like to talk about. And generally there is. Generally people are coming into therapy because something's on their mind or they're struggling with something. And so I'll hear from those parts of the person and identify those parts with them and take notes on those parts and what's coming up, and really just help to shine a light on their internal system. So it's really just getting started, getting to know the protectors, maybe getting to know an exile, but most likely it's really getting to know the protectors of the system, the big parts of the system that are activated on a day-to-day basis. Those are the parts that are going to show up on a first session most likely. And then if it feels good, I ask the client if they'd like to just test out dropping in. And sometimes we do that for 5 minutes, sometimes we do it for 30 minutes. It just really depends on the client and how they're feeling and kind of how I'm feeling that they're feeling. So it's a little bit of a dance, I'm reading them, I'm also asking them questions to see if it feels like that would be a good thing for them to do. But one way or another, I like to get my clients dropped in for like 2 minutes, just so they get a taste of it. And the way that I do that is by asking if it would feel comfortable for my client to close their eyes and take a couple of breaths with me. So that way we both are able to relax and get centered together. And there's also a little bit less vulnerability or feeling of being exposed when both people have their eyes closed and both people are breathing. So I'll ask if it's okay to do that. If it's okay with them, then we do that. So I'll have the client close their eyes, I'll close my eyes, and we'll take 3 really deep breaths together. It's generally 3 to start with. And I'll be talking to them a little bit in between breaths about breath, so that they are consciously thinking about breath as they're breathing, which literally alters the brain. It's incredible stuff. It literally alters the brain when we think about breath. And that's just another way of self-observing. So after that time, I'll just ask them if it's okay, if it feels good, keep breathing like that, keep your eyes closed, and I'm just going to talk to you for a little while. And then I'll do a very short kind of guided meditation and have them check in with their whole body. So I'll ask them to see if they can find this little space inside themselves that feels love and safety and relaxation, and if they can send breath into that space to enlarge in that space, and suggest that if it feels good, that we'll be working from that space today. So almost like a little chair with a bubble around it that you can just kind of turn and check out the whole rest of the system from. And after maybe 3 or 5 minutes of that, I just ask, what are you noticing right now? It's that simple. What are you noticing right now? And you would not believe the kind of stuff that people notice in that space. It's incredible. So IFS is really simple, and it's also kind of complex because we're complex. So the modality is pretty simple, but what happens in each session is so different. It is incredibly different from person to person, but also from session to session. And people experience visualizations of parts. People experience somatic bodily reactions to parts, so like pain or anxiety in certain areas. I mean, people have these thought patterns that are on repeat that will come up. People have memories that come up. People have olfactory memories that come up. They can smell things, or they can see things, or they can hear things that are not in the present reality. It's absolutely stunning. And what we try and do as IFS therapists is use these as gateways into learning more about ourselves, learning so much about ourselves that we love ourselves. Because every part of us is important. Every part of us is valuable. Every part of us is beautiful. And I know you may not feel that way right now when you're watching this video. You might say, that's baloney. That's total crap. But in IFS, that's where it takes you. It takes you to a place where you can really start to acknowledge what your parts do for you and love them for the work that they do inside your system. And by loving them, we heal them. And by loving them, we grow with them.